Star Wars 7x7 episode 2598. Kamino Lost is the season finale of season 1 of Star Wars The Bad Batch. And yeah, today is the full spoiler briefing. We're going to break it down for you today. Punch it. Hey Rebel Rouser, I'm Alan Voivod and this is Star Wars 7x7, your daily dose of Star Wars joy, and thank you so much for joining me for it. So let's be honest with each other, right? The outcome of Kamino Lost was not really in doubt, right? Like, I think we all knew that everybody was going to get out of that alive, and it was just a matter of how, right? I think that's fair to say. And so, what is this episode about as a result? Well, it is mostly about resolving the situation between the Bad Batch and Crosshair. And by resolving, yes, certainly it isn't resolved because they are going to stay on opposite sides. It's not resolved the way the Bad Batch would certainly want it. It's not resolved the way Crosshair would want it either, but at least we know what we're going into with season 2. There was a possibility, a hope that it was just the inhibitor chip that was causing Crosshair to be this way, but Omega has the terrible realization that nope, that is not the case, that Crosshair is just a true believer in the Empire and there is not going to be any swaying him at all. As Tech notes, he is severe and unyielding, and that is his nature and no one can change it. Although, to say that not even Crosshair can change it, yeah, like certainly in the situation in which they find themselves, yeah, it's easy to say that, but man, it doesn't hold out any hope for the possibility of Crosshair being able to change. Even so, Crosshair does do something that resembles a sense of honor by rescuing Omega after she rescued him and made sure that he wasn't trapped and drowned, right? And I have to say that has to have been the best shot of Crosshair's life, right? I mean, yes, he is a sniper expert, but he was firing a grappling hook into stormy water at night, right? And got AZ right on the button. So yes, that has to be the absolute best shot that he has ever put out into the world. And speaking of that shot, that was the one moment that seemed like it was going to be a surprise that turned out not to be a surprise. As I was saying, it was kind of a given that everybody was going to come out of this in one piece, but the possibility of losing AZ3 was actually an emotional one. And it was also one of the situations of multiple ones where I was actually yelling at the TV. Honestly, because I saw her pop open, Omega pop open her tube, and I was like, no, don't, my frustration was visceral at that. And it was the same when they got into that travel tube and they're just walking along. And I know that they kind of had to show them walking along so that way then when they realized dangerous sea creatures were out there, they were going to have to run. So you kind of have to show the contrast. But I was kind of like, there are cracks in this tube already. You should be running flat out right now, just now. So, yeah, I guess I was getting super worked up over this episode, comparatively speaking. So, yeah, that's kind of cool in its way because, yeah, I usually watch these things and I'm, pretty internal with my reactions. But this time I was like, no, very vocal about it. But swinging back around to what the real purpose of the episode was just resolving the conflict between the Bad Batch and Crosshair, and building on that notion is the dialogue, the back and forth, particularly between Hunter and Crosshair, talking about, good soldiers following orders versus blind allegiance making you a pawn, and, these exchanges and the way Crosshair expresses his true belief about, the Republic and the regs and all of that being swept aside, and that the Empire is going to rule the galaxy and that he wants to be a part of it, and that he wants to be a part of it even though he was stranded on Kamino and they just unleashed a volley of destruction at him. And yeah, hopefully, we know how this is going to turn out. Tech says the Empire is going to have scouts showing up, And yeah, so they just leave Crosshair sitting on this landing platform that nobody knew existed, which was how they were able to sneak onto Kamino in the first place. So yeah, that seems like it's kind of taking a big risk that Crosshair is going to get found, but of course he's going to get found. Meanwhile, as for the rest of the clones, and Nala Se for that matter, well, we get the status report from a clone to Admiral Rampart, and you can hear the clone saying, yeah, everything is destroyed, and he's clearly emotional about it, but Rampart doesn't seem to notice. So the clones certainly have to have some feelings about this, and it's going to be interesting to see whether this turns into something more actionable in season 2. And then we have Nala Se in that final stinger arriving at an Imperial facility where a medical officer says, yeah, we are admirers of your work and we have big things planned for you. And she's wearing the uniform that looks very similar to what Dr. Pershing was wearing in The Mandalorian. And so, yeah, I think we have a lot to learn about gene farms and strand casts and things of that nature that were referenced in The Mandalorian, and maybe some of this stuff is going to tie into further seasons of The Bad Batch. And there's actually a lot more to talk about with this episode. We have so many different directions in which we can dive deeply into the results of season 1 and this final story arc, and we are going to do that in the coming days. But that right there is just about everything that is worth noting for the briefing version of our look at Kamino Lost. I will note one other thing, which is just the cinematic level of destruction of Tipoca City. I mean, overall, just across this whole season, the people working on the animation for The Bad Batch and all the different elements of that animation have really raised their game, and this one was huge. Like, they spent a lot of time and effort making that collapse as big a deal as they could possibly make it, and it was just stunning, like the way the animation came out. So kudos to the team there, and kudos just to everybody on the creative side as well for a great first season of The Bad Batch. Again, we will dig more deeply into this in the coming days. But for now, that is going to do it for the big highlights from Kamino Lost, the final episode, episode 16 of The Bad Batch. And that's going to do it for this episode of the show as well. It just remains for me to say thank you so much for joining me for it, as always. And may the Force be with you wherever in the world you may be.
7x7 is not endorsed or sponsored yet by Lucasfilm Limited, Disney, or 20th Century Fox, and is intended for entertainment and information purposes only. Star Wars, the Star Wars logo, all names and pictures of Star Wars characters, vehicles, and any other Star Wars related items are registered trademarks and/or copyrights of Lucasfilm Limited, or their respective trademark and copyright holders. May the Force be with them. All original content is copyright 2021 by Star Wars 7x7. We hope you love it.